Hey guys, so now we're gonna see the part 2 of the French Revolution. I've already uploaded the part 1. If you go and check that out if you've not seen that yet. So it's the outbreak of the revolution, and yeah, so let's get started. So let's see some important dates. So 1774 is when Louis XVI became the king of France, and he was the age of 20, and he faces an empty treasury and growing discount of society within the old regime. He sees that there is an empty treasury, and he becomes a king. And in 1989, the convention of the Estates General, which we'll be learning now, will happen. Okay, let's just learn this now so that you'll get a clear idea of what it is about. So Louis XVI had to increase the taxes, as we already saw that on the last part. He had to increase the taxes for a reason you have learned in the previous section. How do you think he have gone wrong about this? In France, the old regime, the monarch did not have the power to impose taxes according his will alone. Rather, he had to call a meeting of the Estates General. Estates General is nothing but as the king can't increase the taxes as and when he wants, so he has to have the permission of the Estate General. So he called a meeting for the Estate General, which would pass the proposal of new taxes, which why he put the Estate General meeting was that he wanted to add extra taxes for the already he had increased taxes, and now he is again increasing taxes. So the Estate General, which would then pass his proposal for the new taxes, and the Estate General was a political body to which three estates and the representatives. So Estate General, what are the three estates? Come on, tell. So the first estate is clergy, the second estate is nobility, and the third estate is everyone except the clergy and the nobility, which is including the big merchants, lawyers, and everyone, peasants, small landless laborers, everyone. They are all in the third estate. So and the last meeting, it was done, the last Estate General meeting was done in 1614, which is like 100 years. That is so much, right? And a very important date on May 5th, 1980. Now you can understand, right? On May 5th, 1789, Louis XVI called together an assembly in the Estate General to pass the proposal of adding extra taxes, and the recipient hall in the Versailles was prepared to host the delegates. The first and second estate sent 300 representatives each, who were seated in rows facing each other on two sides, while the 600 members of the third estate had to stand at the back. So Louis XVI arranged the meeting on May 5th, 1789, and then he called together an assembly in the Estate General in the town hall of the Versailles, and then they were I told you guys, right, they invite all the estate peoples. So there is first clergy, second nobility, and the third estate, which is everyone, including the everyone except the clergy and the nobility. So for the clergy there were 300 representatives, and for the nobility there were 300 representatives, but for the third estate there were 600 representatives. And the clergy and the nobility were facing each other and sitting, and they were facing each other and seeing, but the third estate people were standing at the back and seeing of what they talked. And so what happened was there are 600 members in the third estate, and 300 members for the clergy and 300 members for the nobility. They were sitting and seeing their faces like that. And nobility were and the third estate people were standing at the back, and the third estate was represented by its more prosperous and educated members. All the small and the landless laborers can't come because some of them wouldn't know to read and write also. So, and all these peasants and artisans and women were also denied entry for this, because at that time they won't give enough respect for women. And some of them wouldn't know how to talk also. Even the women who are educated also, they won't let the women artisans and peasants were denied entry to the assembly. However, their grievances means that they wrote letters, like nearly 40,000 letters, which were given to the more educated people of the third estate, who were assembled in the Estate General. And a lot of them were writing letters, which literally like 40,000 letters, which were given to the representatives, had brought with them, writing their own problems and what was not there for them, and all the problems were written. So, and the voting Estate General in the past has been conducted according to the principle that each estate had one vote. For example, the clergy had one vote, the noble had one vote, and the third estate had one vote. That's all. But the third estate had 600 people, and 600 people, like that's not fair, right? And but by this time, Louis XVI was determined to continue the same practice. He wanted to continue the same practice, which is one vote for clergy, one vote for nobility, and one vote for third estate. And but the members of the third estate demanded that voting now should be conducted by an assembly as a whole, where each member would get one vote, like one person one vote, which is 600 members 600 votes for the third estate, and 300 members 300 votes for the clergy, and 300 members 300 votes for the nobility. So each person one vote. The third estate told that there are 600 people in our group of estate and in our third estate, but the clergy and the nobility had only 300 people, so it's not fair for one vote each group. So they wanted one person one vote. So the king the king denied this. It was one of the democratic principles which was written in Rousey. We have already learned that he has written a book called as Social Contract. It was written here. I told you guys, right? They discuss all these books and all in the coffee shops and saloons, and for people who couldn't read and write, they read it aloud. So when the king rejected the proposal, which is one person for one vote, the king rejected this, the members of the third estate, which is all the 600 people, walked out of the protest, and the representatives of the third estate viewed themselves as the spokesperson of the whole French nation. They thought themselves as a representatives of French nation. On the 20th June, they assembled in the hall of an indoor tennis court, which is, it doesn't have any it's not an outdoor, it's indoor, it's like covered in walls. It's an indoor tennis court. They all assembled there in the ground of Versailles, and then they declared themselves as a national assembly, and they swore not to disperse till they draft a constitution for France that would limit the powers of the monarch. The main reason the people did this was to limit the powers of the monarch. And the National Assembly, where all the people who walked out, they walked out of the Versailles. They gathered on the 20th June. They gathered at a indoor tennis court in the grounds of Versailles, and then they declared themselves as a National Assembly, and then they swore not to disperse until they draft a constitution for France. And mainly they did it because to limit the powers of the king or the monarch. Okay. And then they were at this time there were these philosophers like Mirabeau and Abbé Cyrus. And Mirabeau is born in a noble family, but he still helped the third estate people. So what did Mirabeau do? He gave a lot of powerful speeches and all that. So he was born in a noble family, but he was convinced the need to go away with the society of feudal privilege. So he brought out a journal and delivered powerful speeches in the crowds and assembled at Versailles. So he gave a lot of powerful speeches that everyone were so inspired of. So, and then Abbé Cyrus, he is a priest, he is a clergy. So both of them are not belonging from the third estate, but they still help the third estate. They, Mirabeau is a noble, and the Abbé Cyrus is he belongs to clergy. So Abbé Cyrus was originally a priest, and he wrote an influential pamphlet called as What is the Third Estate? Pamphlet is like a small paper in which there are a lot of things mentioned. And then and so the National Assembly was busy at Versailles drafting a constitution. They told, right, we would not disperse until you draft a constitution. So the rest of the France seethed with the turmoil. Turmoil is like confusion. The rest of France was in confusion when they were drafting all this constitution and all that. But the rest of the France were in confusion. Turmoil is confusion. So a severe winter had meant a bad harvest. The price of bread rose, and often bakers exploited the situation with hoarded supplies. So I already told you guys about this in 1715 to 1789. The price of bread, population of people rose to 23 million to 28 million, nearly 5 million. So the food is very scarce. So, and this is mainly because of because of the climate, because of the wind. If it's winter, it's hard, harsh climates and hailstorms and all that, and they had very little amount of supplies of hoarded supplies. And after spending hours in long queues of bakery, the crowds of angry women stormed into the shops. At the same time, the king ordered the troops to move to Paris. On 14 July, he agitated the crowd to storm to destroy the Bastille. So what happened here was the price of the bread was higher. They rose the price of the bread because there were not a lot of supplies, and the bakers also took the advantage of the situation and rose the prices of the bread. And a lot of women would stand in long queues for the bread, but sometimes they wouldn't even get the bread. So angry women stormed into the shops at the bakeries, and then they just snatched the bread from them. And at this time, the king ordered the troops to go to the Paris, and this time only the rumor was there, and the rumor said that the rumor will come. Wait. So the king ordered the troops to move to Paris, and I'll tell you why. Okay. So on 14 July, he agreed the crown to storm the Bastille. Bastille is the jail, I'll tell you that too. So just wait. So in the countryside, the rumors is a very important thing. Look at this. So in a countryside, rumors spreads from village to village that the lords of manor hired bands of brigands who were on the way to destroy the ripe crops. Caught in the frenzy of fear, peasants in the several districts seized hoes, pitchforks, and attacked the chatics, and then they looted hoard again and burned down the documents containing records of the manorial dues. A large number of nobles fled to their homes, many of them migrating to the neighboring countries. So what is happening here is, there were rumors that a manor is like pretty much like the king for the particular place. So the manor, they say that the manor had hired bands of people who were on their way to destroy the ripe crops of the peasants or the farmers or the riots. And then the farmers were and the peasants they were all like in frenzy of fear. They were so much in fear, like that's the only way of money they will get, right? So they were so much in fear. So the peasants of several districts gathered together, and they took like the hoes and the pitchforks. Pitchforks means you'll have sweepers where they take they gather all the leaves with like a big fork like thing, right? That is pitchforks. You can see in the picture here also. Where is that? Okay, wait. So they took all the pitchforks, and the chariot is nothing but like the a royal place, or like it's like the castle where the noble or the kings live. And then they went to their place, and then they hoarded and burnt all the documents containing the manorial or the feudal dues, the dues that the peasants had to pay to the nobles. They burned all their dues in the anger. They do not know, because it's a rumor, right? So they were in fear, so they didn't know what to do. They just didn't know what to do. So they broke all their houses, and then they burned all the manorial dues. And the large number of nobles, because they were in their house, and even if sometime was that, they would have killed the nobles. So the nobles had no other way to do but to fled. They fled to other countries or to other neighboring countries. And then, faced with the power of the revolting subjects, Louis XVI finally accorded the recognition to the National Assembly. So he was really prone, saying no to the National Assembly. But because of all this, he had no other option but to accept the formation of the National Assembly. And he accepted the principle. I told the veto power. He had something called as the veto power, which is something which the king has. If he doesn't like the law, he can take the law, abolish the law. So now he is accepting that his power should be checked by the constitution. And on the night of 4th August on 1789, the assembly passed a decree abolishing the feudal system, and the members of the clergy were also forced to give up on their privileges. The tithes and tile and all these were abolished, and the land of the owners of the church were also taken by the government. As a result, the government acquired assets of 2 billion livres just from the church. So what happened here is, on the night of August 4th, in 1789, the assembly passed a decree abolishing the feudal system. And the feudal system is the land system, the giving of land to the clergy and the nobles, and all the taxes and tithes were taken off, and everyone had to pay tax now. At the they were divided into three estates: clergy, nobility, and the clergy and the nobles did not need to pay tax. They had some privileges, the feudal dues, but now the clergy and the nobles had to pay the tax, and this was abolished. And then the clergy, because they had the feudal dues, which is land, the land given by the kings, it was confiscated, it was taken away. So the total worth of the acquired assets worth at least 2 billion livres, you guys. That is so much, right? And it's just from the clergy. So later France becomes a constitutional monarchy, and in the National Assembly, which completed the draft of the constitution in the 1791, only the National Assembly has they drafted a constitution, and its main object was to limit the powers of the monarch or the king. And then these powers, instead of being concentrated on the hands of one person, were now separated and assigned to different institutions, which is the legislative, executive, and judiciary. This made France a constitutional monarchy. So the National Assembly was the constitution was drafted in 1791, and its main objective was to limit the powers of the king, and these powers were instead concentrated on just it was not the work of just one person. It was divided into three, which is the constitution, executive, and monarchy, and this made of France a constitutional monarchy. Okay, so how the system worked. So this is a very important diagram, so make sure you go through this. And then the Constitution of 1791 vested the power to make the laws in the National Assembly, which was indirectly elected. This is the citizens of the group of electors who in turn choose the assembly, not the citizens. Okay, so what is happening here is, in 1791 there were I told you there were executive and judiciary and all that. So there are 50,000 people. The 50,000 people will elect 7. So you can see here, wait a second. So these are the electors. These are the people who are called as electors. They elect the National Assembly. 50,000 people elect 745 members of the National Assembly, and then they will form the National Assembly. So the normal people are not the National Assembly. 50,000 normal people will elect 745 members of the National Assembly. They will only elect. Okay, so the normal people, 50,000 people, will elect the National Assembly. So they are not the National Assembly, they will elect. So that is the citizens of a voted group of electors who in turn choose the National Assembly. So not all citizens can vote. Not all citizens can have the right to vote. Only the men above 25 years of age who paid taxes equal to 3 days of labor wage were given the status of active citizens. That is, they were entitled to vote. And so only the men of the age about 25 years can vote, and they must be able to pay 3 days of labor wages as taxes. And then all the women, artisans, peasants, they were all not allowed itself. So the people, only 3 million, one second. So 4 million people were only allowed to vote. Then the population is 28 million. Only 4 million of people were allowed to vote, and these people are called as active citizens. And passive citizens are the people who cannot vote, which is about 3 million men out of 28 million, and all the women and children under the age of 25 cannot vote. So the constitution of one second. And then they were entitled to vote, and the remaining of men and all women were classified as passive citizens because they can't vote. And to qualify as an elector, as a member of the assembly, the man had to belong to the highest bracket of taxpayers. If there is if they can pay a lot of tax only, they will be considered to vote. So we'll be only seeing this, you guys. This is the last paragraph we'll be seeing, and the political symbols will be uploaded as a separate video, as this is itself getting a long time. So you guys can definitely take a 5-minute rest after this video. So now we're going to see the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen. So there is Yeah, one second. Yeah, the constitution began with the declaration of rights of man and citizen, such as right to life. Obviously this must be a thing. Right to life and right to freedom, right to freedom of speech, right to freedom of opinion, equality before law. These were all established as a natural and inalienable rights. That means these were belong to each human being by birth, and these cannot be taken away. And it was the duty to protect each citizen's natural rights, and everyone is equal before the law. So the constitution it began with the declaration of rights of man and citizen. So it does not even include women's rights, so that is so rude. And I think in the part 4 you will learn about women. So just concentrate on this part. So yeah, it's the declaration of rights for men and citizen. And the rights such as right to life, right to freedom of speech, and freedom of opinion, and equality before the law were established as natural or inalienable rights, and these belong to human beings as by birth. Everyone is has this by birth except women and all them. And they cannot be taken away, as it was the duty of the state to protect each citizen's natural right. And make sure you go through this also, guys, the declaration of rights, and then learn about Jean Paul. He died in a bathtub, by the way. I just, yeah, that is true, but just learn about this. And I'll be putting a separate video about the political symbols of the political symbols. I'll be putting the separate video, and you just go through this and the source C and the source B. So yeah, this picture is the declaration of rights, and we'll be learning about all these symbols like this, and all these we'll be learning about this. So yeah, make sure you like this video, and make sure you like, share and subscribe for more videos. And thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you go watch the political symbols and the part 3 and the rest of the lesson. Make sure you like, share and subscribe. Bye.